Hello everyone, today we're going to continue 5.3 which is day 2 and it is on continuing graphing cubic functions relating to the transformations. So you're going to be able to relate the equation and using the parent function to obtain the transformation to graph the new transformed equation. And so here is a review of the points. So here's a recall of information. The 3 points of reference are given here for the cubic function, and we're going to use the general equation to help us with the transformation. So here we have a problem that is relating to that. We're actually going to go in a little different direction. Yesterday you were given the equation and you just had to apply the transformations and find the graph. Today it's kind of like a little bit of the opposite. We are actually given the equations, the graphs of the equation, and you need to actually find the equation for it. So the very important thing that you need to know is we're going to be making use of this general equation here to help us obtain the equation. So let's, for the sake of the problem, we're going to name the g of x y. So we have x and y, and then notice that we have x, y, h, k, so, and then b. So those are the 5 variables that you can find in this equation. So let me help you identify some of the points. So the point that is right in the middle, as you can see, there are 3 points that are given here. The one that is in the middle, we usually label it hk. So in this case, h is equal to -4, k is equal to 1. And then we are going to need a second point, and usually the rule of thumb is we will just use the point to the right of that, and we're going to call this x and y. So now that we have the 4 out of the 5 variables, we're going to substitute it into the equation and solve for b, which is the only variable that we need. Okay, so y, the value is 2. And then we have 1 over b because we do not know what the value of b is. And we have x is -3.5. And h is actually -4, so it's a -4, and that's cubed, and then plus k, that's 1. So we're going to do some simplifying here. 2 negatives make a positive, and then we got 4 minus 3.5, that's just 0.5. And the next thing we're going to do is just clean it up. I'm going to rewrite it with a 1 over b times 0.5, and don't forget we have a cube outside of this plus 1. So I'm going to rewrite the half 0.5 on top of b, and then we're going to still cube that plus 1. Subtracting the 1 to both sides, I need to isolate that so I can have 1 equals 0.5 over b and then cube. So now we're going to need to undo that cube right there, and if you guys never have heard of it, the opposite inverse of squaring is square root. And so the opposite or inverse of cube is actually cube root. So there is a function on your calculator, but you do not need it, to take the cube root of 1, because the cube root of 1 is just 1, because 1 times anything by itself is always 1. So we have 1 is equal to canceling the cube root. The cube root and the cube cancel each other out, and you got 0.5 over b. Next, I will just put a 1 underneath the 1 and cross multiply. So now I got b equals 0.5, which is 1/2. We like to convert decimals into fractions whenever we can in the higher level math. So the final equation is g of x equals, following the protocol here, which is 1 over 1/2. That's b, right? b is 1/2. So 1 over 1/2 is actually equal to 2, guys. So we're going to rewrite it using just 2 times x plus 4, that's h, and then we're going to cube that plus 1. This is the final equation that causes the graph to look like this. I need you guys to actually go ahead and log into decimals.com and enter this equation right here into decimals and tell me if that is going to give you the same exact graph that is graphed right here. So go ahead and do that right now. Take a minute to do that and verify that that is the equation that you obtain before we try the next problem. Go ahead and pause the video after you verified decimals that is the correct answer. then we're going to move on and try another one. So go ahead and try it before we work on it together. Hopefully you've had a chance to try the problem, and this one is actually working with the variable a. So the last example we had b as the unknown, and now we have a. So we're asked to use this equation right here. So just like the same thing that we did earlier, the middle point is going to be called hk, and then we're going to use the point to the right, and we're going to call it xy. And so we're going to again rewrite the equation as y right here, and y is actually 1 equals to a we do not know, so x is actually -1 minus h, that's a minus, minus 2, and then cube plus k is -2. So those are the values that we enter into the equation. We're going to simplify it. Two negatives make it positive, and we got 2 minus 1, which is 1. So if we have 1 and we cube it, it's just still 1. So we have the simplified equation 1a minus 2. That's a very easy problem in math. So we're going to add 2 to both sides to solve for a. So we have a equals 3. So now the final equation is g of x equals 3 times x plus 2. We have no b. We assume that b equals 1, by the way, in case you were wondering what happened to b. So in the other problem, the previous problem, we just assumed that a is equal to 1 because there's nothing in front, so that a was actually equal to 1. So just want to mention that before I forget. So b is actually equal to 1 here, and then we got cube and then minus 2, and this is the general equation that created this graph. Now I need you guys to go into decimals and verify, enter this equation into the equation. So you're going to actually just put y instead of g of x, okay? And you're going to enter y equals that equation and then see if that is the graph that it generates. So just to verify that we have found the correct equation. And hopefully now you're more familiar. We're going to actually try one more. Again, make sure you pause the video and try the problem before you look at the answer. Hopefully you've had the chance to try it. Again, given 3 points, we're going to generate our hk, and using the point on the right to be actually xy. And we're going to call this y here. And so substitute the values. We got 0 equals. Again, we assume that a equals 1 because there's no a. So it's just 1 in the front in this case. So we need b, which is 1 over b. And then x is just 5 minus h. H is 1. And then we cube that plus k. K is minus 1. So that's after all the values are substituted. We're going to simplify. That's going to be 4. So we have actually 0 equals 1 over b times 4. And then don't forget we have a cube. We're going to move the 1 because it's kind of like odd. It's by itself sitting outside. So we're going to move it to the other side. So we got 1 equals, and I'm going to multiply the 4 times 1 on top. So we have 4 over b, and then cubing that on both sides. Again, to get rid of that cube, I need to undo it by taking the cube root of both sides, which will cause the cube to cancel out the cube root. And we just have cube root of 1, which is 1, equals to 4 over b. Again, put a 1 underneath, cross multiply. So we got b equals 4. And now we have the equation g of x equals 1 over 4 times x minus 1 cubed minus 1. And this is the equation that generated the graph that has to do with the graph that is given. So I need you to again verify this with decimals and to make sure that it is the same graph when you enter. Again, use y instead of g of x. And there it is, the end of the lesson. Let's take a look at the discussion problem. The discussion question says, describe the transformations you must perform on the graph of f of x cubed to obtain the graph. So this is just to describe generally, A is going to give you a vertical stretch or compression based on a factor of a factor. So you're going to describe that. And then H is going to be H units, shift left or right. And then K is going to be K units, up or down. So those are just general descriptions of the transformation. And that is a wrap for today. And go ahead and log into Google Classroom with your assignment and get started. Have a good day.